Derek Oakwoods had always been a man of ambition and drive, even though he came from a family of lawyers. His parents, both prestigious attorneys with their own law firms, expected him to follow in their footsteps. But Derek's passion lay in the world of computers and software. After completing his degree in computer engineering, he built his own software company from the ground up. His parents supported his decision even though they didn't quite understand it. Derek's drive and vision led to the success of his business, and soon his software solutions were sought after by major clients. Derek was the type of boss his employees admired: kind, approachable, and generous. He believed in creating a positive work environment, offering excellent benefits, and making sure his team felt valued. Unlike other CEOs, he wasn't one to hoover over his employees. He trusted them to do their jobs, giving them autonomy. However, when working on new projects, Derek had a habit of retreating to his parents' remote cottage in the woods, seeking the solitude to focus without distractions. Only his parents knew where he had disappeared to during these creative bursts. During these retreats, Derek left his operations manager, Susan White, in charge. She was efficient, experienced, and had been with the company since its early days. Susan was the opposite of Derek in terms of management style: strict, demanding, and somewhat cold. But she got results, and Derek trusted her to keep things running smoothly while he was away. One evening, after finishing a particularly intense brainstorming session at the cottage, Derek decided to head back to the city. He didn't realize a storm was brewing. As he drove down the winding mountain road, a deer suddenly leapt into his path. Derek swerved to avoid hitting it, and his car careened off the road, crashing down into a ravine. The impact knocked him out, and he was unconscious for a few minutes. When he regained consciousness, still disoriented from the impact, he staggered out of the wreckage just in time before the car exploded. The force of the explosion tossed him up in the air, and he was thrown a few feet away from the burning vehicle. A nurse named Cheryl Winters, who lived in a nearby town, heard the distant explosion over the storm's roar. As a first responder by nature, she called the sheriff the next morning, reporting what she'd heard. Together with a rescue team, Cheryl found the scene of the crash. They discovered Derek unconscious, bruised, and with no identification on him. He was rushed to the local hospital, where doctors determined he had a severe concussion and had slipped into a coma. For weeks, Cheryl visited him daily, reading to him and praying for his recovery. She felt a strange sense of connection to this mystery man, even though she had no idea who he was. When Derek finally woke up, he couldn't remember his name, where he was from, or how he'd ended up in the hospital. The staff dubbed him John Doe, and Derek's memories of his life and business were like a distant, hazy dream. Derek's parents, meanwhile, were growing increasingly worried. Derek had been out of contact for far too long, and their calls to the cottage were unanswered. They reached out to his company, where Susan assured them that she had everything under control. She offered to take on the role of acting CEO until they could find Derek. Reluctantly, they agreed, not knowing the true extent of Susan's intentions. While Derek struggled with his amnesia, Cheryl became his lifeline. She offered to let him stay at her home once he was discharged from the hospital. He accepted, feeling a sense of gratitude and trust in her that he couldn't explain. Over time, they grew closer, and a gentle romance blossomed between them. Cheryl's kindness, patience, and support brought a light into Derek's otherwise dark and confusing world. But as Derek healed physically, he began to have flashes of memory, images of a modern office, a logo he couldn't place, and a woman's face that stirred unease. Yet, Every time he tried to focus on these memories, they slipped away like sand through his fingers. Months passed, and Derek's doctor recommended a specialized brain scan, which required a trip to a larger hospital in the city. Cheryl insisted on accompanying him, and together they made the journey. After the appointment, they stopped at a restaurant for lunch. As they ate, a woman walked in, her polished appearance and confident stride catching Derek's eye. It was Susan. When Susan spotted Derek, she froze, her face going pale as if she'd seen a ghost. She quickly recovered, but not before Cheryl noticed her strange reaction. Susan avoided their table, but she kept stealing glances in their direction, her expression a mix of shock and fear. Derek, sensing something amiss, approached her. "Do you know me?" he asked. "No, I think you have me mistaken for someone else," before rushing out of the restaurant. Derek felt a strange tug at his memory, but the truth remained elusive. A few days later, back in the small town, while walking through a parking lot, Derek accidentally collided with a trucker's swinging door. The impact was strong enough to knock him down, and he was rushed back to the hospital with a mild concussion. But this time, when he woke up, everything came rushing back: his name, his life, his company, and the betrayal that Susan had tried to hide. Derek turned to Cheryl, who was sitting anxiously by his bedside, and said, "I remember everything now. My name is Derek Oakwoods, and I think I have some unfinished business in the city." With Cheryl by his side, Derek returned to his life in the city, but he kept his return a secret. He contacted the company's legal and HR departments, sharing his story and instructing them to prepare the necessary paperwork to remove Susan from her position. He warned them not to leak any information about his return. On the day of reckoning, Derek arrived at the office before anyone else. He sat in his old chair, facing away from the door, waiting for Susan to arrive. When she finally burst into the office, shouting orders and berating staff, she was shocked to see Derek sitting calmly at his desk. She dropped her coffee, the cup shattering on the floor. "Did you see a ghost?" Derek asked with a wry smile, turning his chair to face her. Susan stammered, I thought you were gone?" Derek finished. "Why, Susan? Why did you pretend not to recognize me at the restaurant? Why betray the company I trusted you to manage?" She had no answers, only a look of guilt and fear. Derek handed her a letter of termination. "You're done here, Susan. HR will settle your accounts. Security will escort you out." As word spread through the office that Derek was back and Susan had been fired, employees flocked to his door, welcoming him with genuine relief and joy. Derek's presence restored a sense of hope and warmth that had been missing under Susan's cold management. Derek proposed to Cheryl in a heartfelt moment that evening, thanking her for everything she had done for him. She accepted with tears of joy, and together they moved into Derek's condo in the city. With Cheryl working at a local hospital and Derek back at the helm of his company, life settled into a new, happier rhythm. 6 months later, they exchanged vows in a small, intimate ceremony surrounded by family and close friends. Derek's parents, grateful for Cheryl's role in their son's recovery, welcomed her with open arms. In the end, Derek not only regained his company, but found a deeper purpose and love he hadn't known he needed. And as he looked into Cheryl's eyes on their wedding day, he realized that sometimes losing everything can lead to discovering what truly matters.